A very warm welcome to this week's show here to see the Shelburne. It's an old voice from the past, Andy McGowan here. I'm delighted to be stepping in for Nevin, who is away on a well-deserved break this bank holiday weekend. Also away sunning himself, probably somewhere exotic like Drogheda, Collie. But one man who I haven't seen in a long time. The memories, they're all flooding back. The band is back together. Donny McKagan is here. Donny, haven't seen you in ages. Wonderful to see you. How are you, and how has the season been? First and foremost, I should ask.
Very good, Andy. Good to see you again. Yeah, good to get the band back together. Let's play all the hits. Nostalgia has never been more in vogue. So
Moccasins, the whole lot.
why not? It's the
Mm.
sun's out. Um, yeah, look, a mixed bag of things to mull over for sure. I said it to you just before we came off on air there that only the Reds could turn a week where you effectively have won the lotto into a kind of a meh feeling, but we've somehow managed it. But lots to be positive about. And on the whole, I suppose, look at the halfway point, we still have plenty to play for. So we'll look maybe through the details of that as we go on. But on the whole, and more broadly, things could be a lot worse.
Absolutely. So, as Donny mentioned, there was a lot to discuss. We'll go through Sean Russell's team progressing in the All Ireland Cup. Joey O'Brien's Chargers haven't really set the world alight. We'll talk about Galway last Friday, and of course, the big news off the field. There was the news on the funding from the IIP. What is the IIP? What does it? How does it work? We shall do our very best to go through everything tonight. So, Donny, let's start up in Belfast. Sean Russell's team had almost, bar a major catastrophe, they had guaranteed their progression in the Ireland Cup. Glentoran were the opponents up in the Blanchflower Stadium, place that I know you know well. Many happy memories up there. 6-1 win, job done, progression into quarterfinals, which we'll discuss in a moment. Good news, good day's work for Sean.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we actually had a table at our wedding called the Blanchflower Stadium table. Jen had this idea to name each table after a stadium. We'd watch matches together, and yeah, I think it was around COVID. I ended up there because the restrictions were less in the UK, and I took in a Harland and Wolf Welders FC game against, I think it was Distillery or Lisburn, or I can't remember it. It lovely little stadium, as anyone who tuned in to the counter programming to the small matter of the Champions League final, as both games kicked off at 5 o'clock. I was double screening, but it's a beautiful little stadium where all four sides are kind of unique from one another. A very nice little tidy ground that if say newcomers to the League of Ireland like the Mayos and so on of this world, they could do a lot worse than to replicate something like that. But yeah, the team was the result obviously very, very good. A lot of good performances, and the main thing that we're through to the quarterfinals. We've got a home draw against Cliftonville, which is great. We'd be heavy favourites for that, you'd imagine. And just looking across some of the other results, we've seen some of the big hitters fall. So Athlone Town were beaten by Treaty, and they didn't make it through. Shamrock Rovers were filled in at home 5-1 by Wexford. Hashtag game changers, changing the game forever. And yeah, there was big wins for Peamount and some other teams as well. A lot of goals flying in almost every game. The least amount of goals scored was Galway against DLR. So yeah, we got through, and we're looking good for probably a place in the semi-final against the winners of that Treaty Bows game, which should be interesting. But no sign of Sive Hartley in the squad, which is a bit unfortunate. You and I were speculating, Andy. I don't know, maybe it might be an issue around exams or something like this, but it was a shame that we didn't get to see her, I thought.
Yeah, she was one who missed out, but besides that, Donny, Sean went with almost a full strength team, which I was a little surprised about. But then when I thought about it, the senior team, as we mentioned separately, doesn't play enough games. You've got 22 league games plus, let's say, 5, 6 cup games, maybe a bit more if you progress. It's not a lot. So do you think Sean is just trying to get those minutes into those first choice players as much as possible? Because there's a lot of big games to come, and there's no point if they had to sat out the game on Saturday, for example. There could be 2 or 3 weeks without a game. So
Yeah, it's not ideal. And yeah, we've talked about it privately and on the air here before, Andy, about wishing that the women's league was expanded to at least 3 rounds. I think just following the first division and their format is the way to go, and I really hope that people look at that sooner rather than later, because it's not good for fans and it's not good for players, in my opinion. I wonder, like, is how much of Sean Russell's thinking when it comes to the squad is the fact that so many of the fringe players are very, very young, um, and that he mightn't think that they're quite ready for a full step up yet. And then, as you said, the others being, you don't want players getting rusty who you're going to need, because the reality is when we get back to the league on the 20th of June against Sligo, we've very little margin for error. We can't really afford to slip up really at all if we want to have a title push, and that's what Sean said he's come here to do. So there's maybe an element of that of still trying to knit players into a system, still trying to keep people busy with getting enough reps and getting their sort of on-field dynamics working together. But he did, to be fair, start Hallie Harcourt, who we hadn't seen for quite some time. And she, as she is wont to do, she has made a big impact yet again. In her senior debut last year, she became the club's youngest ever goal scorer, having just turned 15, I think, when she scored against Sligo, a lovely little dink that I was privileged to be there for. And this is her first senior start, and she bagged herself a brace, a goal after 36 minutes and a goal after 62, both very well taken. And I really like her approach to the game. She's a bit of a throwback. She's a direct player who loves to take on defenders and makes a beeline for the goal every time she gets the ball. So I thought she was really, really good, and it'd be excellent to see her being more involved. She's still only 15 years old, if you can believe it. So look, and I think I might have mentioned this on last week's show, Andy, that we can't really have the same. We can't really hold teenagers to the same standard that you'd hold players on the bench for the men's team, say, who are full-time professionals. They're adults, they're men. And whereas here you've got a 15-year-old girl who goes to Larkin Community College in the inner city. I know that because I wrote her player profile up at the start of the year, and I know that the club do sort of a coaching outreach arrangement with Larkin College. So she really is a good news story in every direction. Is Hallie Harcourt, and I hope her story just continues to grow. It's already gotten off to a great start, and if she could contribute to our run in, albeit at such a tender age, the idea of maybe having herself and Kate Mooney on the pitch at the same time could be the sort of shot in the arm that our season requires going forward.
Yeah, that's something to whet the appetite. Hopefully we see Kate back soon. I think we're heading into June now. June was always sort of a target, but as we all know, the human body can have its own timeline. So hopefully Kate will be back very soon. So the first leg, excuse me, the quarterfinal of the All Ireland is on June 14th, that weekend. Following weekend, only I believe, as you said, the league is back.
Yeah.
And then the week after that, the weekend of June 28th, is the potential semi-final for the All Ireland. So the games are starting to crank up now, which is a good sign. And
I think our next league game, Andy, as well, after Sligo, might be at Athlone as well. So you're once, and this is the annoyance of the stop-start nature of it, right? Like, take a few weeks off, girls, and then and by the way, you're straight into a knockout competition and a game that might define the entire campaign when it comes to the league.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at there. Like the fact that Athlone will probably not have, well, unless they can squeeze in a league game, rearrange one. They could have one game the next 4 weeks potentially, because they're not in action, no longer in All Ireland action, and they're off next weekend, as are all League of Ireland teams, I believe. So, some good news: Aoibhinn Clancy again back in the Ireland squad. Is there any chance for her getting game time, Dunny? You know, when I look at something like, I'm not being unfair, but I think she has the attributes to be getting game time. It's
Yeah,
tricky,
I'd
tricky.
agree. I've seen her. Unfortunately, like I thought there were squads that she was included in prior to this, um, that I expected her maybe to get some minutes against teams that aren't of the caliber of the two that we're about to play. So, I mean, just being realistic about it, I don't think she will feature this time. But look, um, no more so than we saw with Jack Moylan or whatever. Sometimes you just availability and being a face, and answering the call whenever that comes up is enough to keep you involved. And hopefully, Aoibhinn, look, it'd be great if she got some minutes. But I just think these games, Ireland are going to be struggling. To get any kind of result, and obviously the stakes are very high. I don't know if that's a scenario made for someone to come in and make their debut under this manager. So, look, hopefully she impresses on the training field if nothing else, and gets some good coaching, gets some good experience, and keeps her face in the frame going forward.
Yep, I tell you what, it's better to be in the tent than not in it. So best of luck to Aoibhinn this week. So, yeah, a week off for the men's team and the women's team. So, Donny, let's move on let's park the women's for now. We'll come back to that in the weeks ahead. So, our favourite topic, Tolka Park on a Friday night. I was on vacation or holiday, watched it on LOI TV, which was never the same experience for sure. But God, it wasn't good to watch from my vantage point. Was it any different being at the match? Because again, we've had so many comments in saying, we were unlucky. On another night, we could have won 4-0. The usual nonsense. The goalkeeper had the greatest game of his life. I think I was watching a different game, because there's no point saying we could have, would have, should have. We didn't. We threw away another 2 points, and it's copy and paste, repeat, and that's why we're stuck mid-table, Dunny. Over to you.
Oh Jesus! Yeah, you've just punctured a hole in the dinghy and told me to jump in. Look, there's a lot in that. How was it on the night? I watched the first half in the Riverside, and the second half up behind the glass again. I tried to repeat the dose for what had worked against
You're getting very
Waterford.
fond of that now, aren't you? That's what,
Yeah,
two in a
well, it
row.
worked. It worked. We were shooting the same direction both games in both halves, and I was like, okay, well, we needed a goal, and I thought, well, I got a 93rd minute winner into the end that I was in the last time, so let's repeat the dose. I had my pal Kev with me as well, who hadn't been to Talk in a while, and I was eager to kind of show him some of the new bells and whistles that we have around the place. He thought the place was looking very well. Wasn't overly impressed with our brand of football, I don't think, was our Kev. But look, we've said this a few times on the pod this year, Andy. I think that in isolation, the game, whatever game it was, whether it's the Sligo 0-0 and now this, or even, people weren't overly convinced by the performance in the win against Waterford. But in isolation, you could defend it and you can say John Martin on another night has a couple of goals. He should definitely at least have had one. I thought it was very unlike him, frankly, to miss the chances he was missing. And he hasn't looked. Look, he's our top striker. The goals will tell you that much. And when he's on, he's on. I just felt he hasn't looked quite himself in the last couple of weeks for me. But unfortunately, this isn't in isolation. And I think I used the analogy of sort of Chinese water torture, that like one drip on its own is just, a drip of water on your forehead. But we've had now 10 home matches, 900 home minutes plus of football at Tolka Park. We're past the halfway point now of what your season tickets purchase has gotten you to come and watch and follow your team at home. And we've seen one win in 10. So we have what is it? Four draws, 5 draws now. Plus, so is it 8 points from 30 at home?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 draws and a win. So eight from 30 at home. And this is where I'm getting the analogy of the Chinese water tortures. Like, it's the same people showing up to watch all of these games, and I think we're being beaten down a bit by it. Because a lot of people are kind of just getting fed up with things not turning. We're seeing a lot of the same. The games look very similar. Like you could have transposed a lot of what we saw on Friday with the Sligo, Waterford, Drogheda games that have happened recently, or even if you wanted to go, delve further back to Pats and games like that, where it's quite frustrating. Then we make the breakthrough, and then we shoot ourselves in the foot again. And look, we have improved. And I was on the pod recently talking about 3 clean sheets in the previous 6. And had we kept a clean sheet the other night, obviously we would have won the game. And so look, our defending from set pieces has largely improved recently, but on the whole, it's still not great. I had actually someone reached out to me with a stat saying that Mr. Zeno Ibsen Rossi was a constant in every clean sheet we've kept, bar one. So all the clean sheets that we've kept this season, recent and past, bar the Sligo away game, the 1-0, where Spiel made a really good save towards the end to keep it level. He didn't play that game. Rossi didn't, but he's been in all the others. So I don't know. I thought he's been kind of unlucky to be dropped in some of the games. I thought he was absolutely excellent when he came in away to Pats, and that kind of got us. That was a bit of a catalyst for sort of turning the corner that we've been talking about turning. And I know we had a Friday Monday situation where he played one and didn't play the other. That's fine. I like him in the team. And I like the fact that we keep more clean sheets with him than without him. But look, we had more possession, we had more shots, on target, we had more big chances, but we missed a lot of the big chances. And look, again, it is just like I feel like we're being worn down, Andy. I don't know if you agree. Just by this home form has just become a drudgery. Like 10 games, 1 win. Any way you slice it, it's not good enough. And I noted as well that we've had 3 crowds in a row now below 4,000, albeit not much below this last Friday. But frankly, I'd like to see 4,000 as kind of our floor and for the men's game, and I would always like us to have that at minimum for non-Dublin derbies and so on. And look, I don't know. I think largely the fans have stuck with the project, have stuck with the team, have stuck with the manager. But there is some evidence there of people just getting a bit fed up, just getting a bit fed up of coming and seeing a lot of the same things and being left frustrated,
Let's look at some of the stats, which stats and data can always be massaged into glass half full and half empty. But the facts, some facts. Shells are 5th at the moment, 26 points from 19 games. We've won 6 games, 8 draws, 5 defeats. Again, draws are always the ones that seem to kill us. One home win all season, Donny, as you said. Away form has been excellent. I think we've had 5 away wins. But it kind of sums up to me, like, we've now played Derry away twice, and we've won and drawn. So that's average 2 points a game, which is fantastic. Away to Derry, you take that all season long. But if you flip that around to Galway, because of the cancelled fixture a few weeks ago, we've now played Galway twice in Tolka, and we've taken 2 points from 6. We still have to go to Eamon DC Park twice this season. So, that's the importance to me of trying to get points on the board at home. If we had been absolutely hammered in a couple of games, sometimes I can take that more. But the fact that we're giving away truly, truly dreadful goals is what kicks me in the nuts. Like the goal last Friday, was it Jermaine Franz
Piero.
Piero? Yeah,
Yeah, he was only on the field, and yes,
yeah,
he came on in the 64th
yeah,
and is wheeling away, scoring. So
yeah,
it must have been nigh on his first touch. I saw
yeah,
we
yeah.
did that. Remember, we played Dundalk, and
Exactly. Yeah,
their sub came on. His first
yeah,
touch was slamming it into the roof
yeah.
of the net.
Well, as I said, I was watching it on holiday in Spain. I actually thought the link had frozen because everyone just seemed to stand there. The ball, I think, just hit off his lap and just went over the line. Now, that's like, honest to God, the old sort of phrase, if you saw that in the Phoenix Park on a weekend, you'd be pulling your hair out.
Mm.
All the hard work, all the chances we had created, and a simple just lob it into the box. And I think they scored a similar goal earlier in the season when, was it Twardek, I think,
Yeah,
scored a similar scrappy goal in Talca. That's killing us. And that sort of is reflected in the goal difference after 19 games. We're 1 goal up. So look, we've had our injuries. Is there any news on Oren Casey coming back? It's I don't. I certainly don't blame individuals. I think it's more of a unit issue because, as you said, I think Sam Bone has had moments of brilliance this year, but then a couple of weeks ago he was arguably at fault for 2 of the goals. Forgive me, I can't remember the game. Paddy hasn't been. He's had his injury issues. He's had his own personal family issues, but again, I think he's been solid. And Ibsen Rossi, I think, has done well when he's come in, along with, let's say, Mbeng, who's been out. So we can't point fingers there, but is it the fact that there's no consistency, or is that just too easy to say? Or are people zonal marking? Are we not just getting down in the dirty stuff? Taking your man from a set piece. He's my man. I'm going to make sure, like, or is that just too easy to say? It's just when you see how much effort we put in to create stuff at the other end, just to give it all away so poorly, it's just so disappointing.
yeah, and look, the leopard doesn't change its spots, right? We knew that when you play Galway United, like when you play Drogheda, you best be prepared for set pieces because that's about the only metric they outperformed us on the night in is actually corners won. They got 6 to our 4, but with Galway, what you're going to get long throws, you're going to get free kicks in their own half are going to be weaponized the same way that Drogheda do. So if you haven't packed your lunch for an evening of tough physical battles in the box, you're going to get upended, and seeing Franz Pirot, who's a big, strong, physical centre forward, come on when you're a goal up, and that this is probably their best route to back into the game, the set pieces, and to not defend it manfully enough is upsetting. To not to not go on and score a second ourselves, with some of the big chances we had and missed on the night. I know nobody is a huge fan of XG, but it has us at 2.8, nearly 3 goals, created. John Martins obviously has missed a couple of big chances on the night, which is a bit uncharacteristic for him. But it just, again, it plays into this drip of like, at home things that aren't going right. And look, I don't subscribe to the idea of, well, if when we get player X or player Y back, suddenly things are going to click. That's not based in any evidence. That's not based on any facts. That's just wishing your life away that the future something will happen to make it all better. And we've got more than enough fit players in the squad. And defending set pieces doesn't require a huge amount of skill. And I'd say that as someone who's defended my fair share over the years in the public parks of Dublin. You just have to be switched on. You just have to grab a shirt of the opposite colour, and you have to try and get your bloody nut on a ball before they do, and then clear your lines appropriately. As I said, Rossi has been a constant in the games where we've actually managed to do that. He didn't get picked the other night. I'm not saying I put him in, we win the game, but you'd like to think that maybe someone with a bit of leadership would have seen to their striker who was just come on the field. He seems to have kind of slipped between the gaps somehow, and it's just very frustrating in the round. Again, like one night, if this was just one night and we had won 5 or 6 home games, but this would be like, look, it happens. These games, these games happen. We played well enough to create a bunch of chances. We didn't take them. There'll be another night. But as this rolls on, and as I said, half your season tickets already expired. People now are coming to Tolka Park and aren't expecting to see a win. And as I said, I think that I looked at online as well. There's a mixture of anger and apathy, and I don't know which is worse. Apathy is probably worse because people are just are saying just copy and paste the same thing from the last game and the game before that and the game before that at home. What I have said on here before, Andy, is that look, having the great away record that we have, I worried that would drop off if we couldn't pick things up more broadly at home. It hasn't, and we have an opportunity now at the halfway mark to have a bit of a reset and look at going again in the second half. But I don't know what changes. I don't expect to see Oran Casey anytime soon. If he does, what kind, like we don't have any evidence to go off whether Oran Casey's, at the second coming of Franco Baresi or whatever. Like we don't know. We've very little evidence to go on. I'm sure he'll be a good player for us, but we haven't seen it.
I know Sorry, go ahead, Donny.
No, I was just going to say, and look, I don't think we even issued an injury update or a match update this week. I don't think there was one before Friday, after Monday's game up in Derry.
I don't really, to be honest, I don't even read those anymore, Donny, because I think a lot of the pre-match sort of narrative from the club is, again, you use that phrase, copy and paste. There's not much, and that's their call. Maybe it's a media call. Maybe it's.
I think it's the manager. To be honest, Andy, like Joey O'Brien is what he is, and what he is a sort of a hard-nosed ex-pro. And we've gone from a previous manager who was obviously a hard-nosed ex-pro in his own way, but he seemed to enjoy the kind of the jousting with media. He seemed to enjoy kind of jousting with other managers and making things emotive and making things personal and making you feel something as a supporter. Pulling Harmo out of the crowd, throwing jerseys into the away end in Dalymount. You could go through a list of 50 things that he did that pissed off people at other clubs and that made us love him more. And even when you didn't get great results, you kind of you would feel that he would kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and give a bit of an insight into his own thinking. He'd be critical, very critical, sometimes too critical of players. And then you'd get the arm around the shoulder, where you'd feel like, he'd die for his players and this kind of thing. Joey is not that guy. Joey is not going to be that guy. Um, that's fine. He's his own man. I get the impression he doesn't enjoy doing any media. I don't think he has very much to do, frankly. I think for top flight professional football, the media in the media that you're forced to do is quite minimal, I would say, compared to a European average. But I don't think he enjoys doing them. You tend to get very little info on why players aren't involved, or how long they're going to be gone for, or how their recovery is going. And he has publicly said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want to talk about injuries, and he doesn't want to use that as an excuse. So in the absence of all that, when the manager is saying, "Don't talk to me about injuries. I'm not going to talk to you about injuries. I don't want to use them as excuses," then all you have to go on is the 90 minutes. And unfortunately, at home, as I said, over 900 home minutes now played and one win. It's not. The evidence is not great. And look, I still think we're unbeaten in 7, 4 draws, 3 wins. That's good. That's a lot better than the run before that was 4 straight losses. But he was doing as little talking then as he is now. If things pick up, I imagine very little is going to change. So I don't know. Like, I kind of feel like it's on the players maybe more than anything to step up. We have, you have Milan and Ben coming back. You have Meepo coming back. This is good, but then we know that Kerr McEnroy probably needs knee surgery, and he's going to be a loss for probably at least a couple of months. So we've seen, obviously, Eliis Chapman has come in, played his first 90 minutes on Friday. We've seen Evan Caffrey being deployed several games now as a centre midfielder. So it's kind of the idea of like, oh, when we get our players back fit, like that's not reality. It's kind of like it's a whack-a-mole situation, it feels, with injuries, where we're getting some back in some areas and then we're losing them in others. So we're just going to have to sort of roll with the punches. And look, I'd rather be drawing games than losing games. But as you said, with the goals scored and goals against, it's very middle of the road. It's, and one of two things is either going to happen. Either we're going to pick up the performances at home, or we're going to finish the season with about 3 home wins in 18. And that'll be our reality. And I can't recall a season where we've been on course to win so few home games. I think we won more home games in the half a season that we got relegated in the COVID season. We won at least 2.
We did. We did.
And the season was over at this stage that year. We went down. So it's the away form that's propping us up, and I kind of feel like, as good as that is, and long may it last, please God. But I kind of feel like it's an inevitability that will slide a little bit. And if it does, without us picking up the slack at home, we're going to have a season effectively written off, where we had big ambitions. This was the season where we were going to use Jamestown to our benefit and push Shamrock Rovers, who've, they are consistent, but they lost 2 games in a row to teams that, you wouldn't expect them to lose to. And we've just never laid a glove on them. And like Collie was saying on the show last week, Andy, that he thought that we needed to win on Friday to keep the title hope alive. I think that's gone. I think even now, looking at the gap between us and third, it's starting to look a bit wide for me. And we know that 4th doesn't necessarily guarantee anything. So, look, there's plenty of points yet to be played for, but 10 games at home a lot of it looked the same, and I'm just not sure where the change will come. If we lose Harry Wood, and with Kerr McInroy gone for at least a couple of months, um, that midfield could be a real issue, an area of concern going forward as well. But hopefully we don't lose Harry. Hopefully Kerr's back soon. Hopefully we recruit well in the window. But
A lot of
yeah,
hopefulies there,
there's
Donny.
a bit too much hoping.
A lot of hoping
Yeah,
there. Well, we did, yeah. So anyway, thanks for that, Tony. Super stuff as always.
yeah.
Let's go to some mailbag questions. The aforementioned Mr. Wood does make an appearance, but we'll come back to him in a moment. So, email from Kevin last. Kevin, thanks as always. Now this is where I can differ from perhaps not being at the game, Donny, but Kevin says it was a great first half performance. How we didn't go in at least one up, it's hard to know. Second half, we were backwards. Subs not seeming to make much of an impact, not testing the keeper. Build up play in the final third too slow. That could be used, in my opinion, for 90% of our home games this year. Is Kevin right? Is it just, again, like we're not looking to throw anyone under any buses, but we seem to do a lot of good stuff. Like we're playing with a lot of directness in our play. John Martin, Harry Wood. If we lose either of them, I think we're in big trouble. I'll come back to the Wood question shortly, but thoughts on
Yeah,
that one,
we
Kevin?
were certainly dominant in the first half. We had a lot more of the ball, and look, if John Martin slots home either of the big chances that fell to him,
Sure, score, yeah.
it's looking very different. I don't think, Jesus, I was look. This is how much we've turned the corner. I was just about to say I don't think we would have conceded 2 goals had we scored two. I think two would have been enough to win. I'll feck it. I'll stand by it. I think we probably wouldn't have, because I do think we have turned a corner from the shambolic days of the conceding 3 and 4 goals every week. But I didn't think like it was the atmosphere was bad in the ground. The crowd, some people expected a lower crowd. It was just under 4,000. Galway brought barely anybody, which I was a bit disappointed in, considering
It has
so many of
been.
them live here. I
It
live
is.
in Dublin. Like,
Yeah, I thought. Yeah, I saw very few Galwegians there. Has Tolka been a bit flatter this year, doesn't he? Sorry to go off topic, but
well,
I haven't felt again. As supporters, we can't just turn up and expect the Riverside to entertain us. We all have a responsibility. Now we're
yeah,
not asking everyone to start doing cartwheels outside a chipper and you know with a samba band or anything, but we all have to get behind the team, no matter how disappointing or how frustrating it is. But
it's
it
a
has been,
symbiotic relationship, right?
yeah, yeah.
And this is where Duff really shone, because he got that too, and he'd stick something in the media before a game if he thought that things had been flat recently, or he'd call on the supporters in a way that would rouse you, in a way that would make you feel like you being there mattered. Um, I don't think there's been any of that this season. A kind of a rallying cry beyond just platitudes at the end of a post-match interview saying, "Yeah, fans are grand, fans are great. We need them behind us." They gave us a bit just the same kind of tired cliches, nothing that of any real significance. But like, the performances have often been very flat or worse. And frankly, I think when we are dynamic and when we are going at teams, and it's as evidenced in some of the second half performances where we haven't been amazing, but we've been peppering the goal, or we've been getting into areas. The Riverside and the Drumcondra stand have risen. Not I'm always too far away from the main stand. I'm not saying there'd be no noise in the main stand, but the ones nearest me have always risen to kind of match what's on the field. And I grant you that we can't just stand there with our arms folded, expecting things to fall into our lap. But I get the frustration too, and there's been no, as I said, there's been no attempt from management to bridge a little bit of a disconnect there. Um, there has been, the home results have just been so poor that obviously people are less and sort of ecstatically energetic to just, shout their heads off for 90 minutes when what's in front of them is often a bit sterile. And I think when things do improve on the field, the crowd matches to meet them. And I think the dynamic of the reopened Drumcondra stand is not to be overlooked, because obviously that's been looking pretty full for most games, and those are people who, a lot of them probably would have been watching the game in the Riverside previously. Add into that the fact that the numbers are lessening. As I said, three games on 3 home games in a row now where we've failed to hit 4,000. So the numbers are even smaller to begin with, and then they're dissipated out by the geography of the ground, which is what we want. You want more. We certainly don't want to be closing stands, but so look, I think if form improved, if wins started to occur, atmosphere would go up. I would not be pointing the finger at myself in the mirror or other fans just to be like, we need to up our game.
Okay.
The sunny day as well, Andy.
Yeah.
It's something about like when we're raised on nighttime football. League of Ireland is, nighttime football. It feels a bit more feral when things are in the dark, and then when it's a game against, like, it's a non-derby game, it's 25 degrees, and the ball is kind of being brought up to a certain point and then recycled. I think we didn't get a lot of joy from our wing backs. I don't think it's really worked, frankly. Having Jarvis at left wing back, it hasn't borne enough fruit. Nevin on the show last week would have spoken on, maybe trying to get, when Jarvis is further forward, that we get more joy. His goal was exquisitely taken, and that's where you want to see him. I don't think he had a particularly big impact on the game. On Friday, he was hooked for Kelly after an hour. And Bang, for me, still, I know he's coming back, and I do like him as a player. Always have. I just wish he would be a bit more direct when he gets. It kind of seems like he's going as far as the defender will allow him, and then he'll cut back inside. He'll go backwards or sideways, and he has speed. We've seen him do it against us for Cork. We've seen him do it in Europe against better teams than Galway United, taking players on and try to beat them on the outside. And whether it's just a legacy of his injury, he hasn't really been bringing that to the game. And when you're playing the system we're playing, if the wide guys aren't creating width and getting overlaps and putting defenders facing their own goal, it doesn't really function. And obviously Cara McInroy as well in the middle is a big loss. Chapman came in. Andy, I don't know.
Hold your horses on him for the moment.
Okay.
We'll come back to him now in a moment.
But yeah, look, like, again, it wasn't a terrible performance for me, but it's this kind of, it's just another drip of, like, kind of grand, pretty good in parts, but not good enough ultimately.
Yeah. Now, going back to the question from Kevin last, which I rudely interrupted you on, Donny. Kevin also says, why do we insist on putting 11 players in the box when defending corners? Now, I hadn't noticed that, so I don't know if that's a one-off or if Kevin has his notebook out, but I find it unusual if he would have everybody in the box, especially when you see someone like Franz Piero just tapping it in from half a yard out. But any observations on that one, Donny?
I hadn't noticed that, to be honest. I know that was something that a former manager of ours used to do all the time, and it drove people absolutely doolally. Because, of course, there's a time maybe to do that, and it's often, you know, late in the game if you're hanging on. But the disadvantage of it obviously is that if you win the first contact or you clear your lines, there's absolutely nobody there to clear it to, or to even to close down the opposition. But it could have happened once or more, but I don't think that's something that we've been doing every week. So
Okay.
Until I see more evidence of it, I'll say, okay, maybe we did it, but it mightn't necessarily be something that we do every week.
Okay. Question of the week, Dunny. Are you sitting down for this one?
I am.
Rob,
Brace myself.
This is thanks, Rob. Have we seen the potential rebirth of Eliis Chapman? Question mark. He needs game time and confidence to make all the difference as a player. I thought he played very well, and I'm glad to see him play. I think he played full 90-ish.
He did, yep.
Your own views on Mr. Chapman?
Well, yeah, I've seen that in the digital age. I suppose I shouldn't be taken by surprise when everything seems to be a culture war, but people have maybe gone a little over the top in anointing him as, you know, like the second coming, the rebirth, the renaissance of Chapman, holding him up like the Simba lion cub, you know. But I look, we're in a bind.
Yeah.
You know, we had suspensions for Lunny, and obviously Kerr, as we've said, isn't coming back anytime soon. And he took his chance. I thought, look, he was put in. I thought he was our best midfielder on the day. I don't know if that's damning him with faint praise, but it is what it is. And I, not to sound, and again, I don't like pointing fingers at the fan base. And it's not a big deal. I thought it was a bit off color. The songs, I don't know if they were coming through on the LOI TV coverage, Andy, but there was a lot of songs about Eliis Chapman that were being sung right off the bat before the game had even started, or just as the game started.
In a negative way, don't he?
No, no, but positive, but snarky, deliberately, we don't have an Eliis Chapman song.
I wasn't aware of it.
But so we were just putting his name in
insert here.
Yeah, in other tunes that we have for other players. And it was kind of ironic cheers out anytime he passed the ball 5 yards. Now it did, I think, sort of dissipate over time, but the first half anyway, there was a lot of it. And I thought that it was pretty obvious that it was ironic. Or intended to be ironic, and for a player who has been a letdown. I believe he did an interview after the game. I haven't heard it yet, but where he might have talked about injuries and stuff and struggling with that. I didn't hear that, but again, that if we had known that, like I know nothing about his injury struggles. People might be less inclined to stick the boot in to a player if they are aware that that player has gone through some situations, have gone through some issues, and have had to overcome some things. But as a fan base, we're completely in the dark on that matter. But either way, on the evidence was he gave a good 90-minute performance, and it's certainly not down to Eliis Chapman that we didn't win the game. I thought he was quite good in possession. He kept things ticking over, and I was under the impression that he was probably not long for the club and that he was going to be going to Sligo in the window. But with this performance and with Kerr McEnroy being unavailable, I wonder if that's now off the cards and if we might be seeing quite a bit more of him. So, and look, no more than I said it about Evan Caffrey when I thought he was extremely dynamic and excellent when he played against St. Pat's. That when I said there that if that's the Evan Caffrey we can get in the middle of the park every week, I'd absolutely be here for it. If the performance that Eliis Chapman gave against Galway is the performance we can expect from here on out, then I'm absolutely here for that as well. And whether he'll start every game or whatever, I'm not sure when JJ comes back. But he certainly put his face in the frame, and I think we hopefully will be seeing more of him.
I would be amazed if he's let go now on loan. I think he did play well. You touched on it there, Donny. The fact he did the post match interview with Darren Cleary on Shell's TV, which may not seem significant, but to me, I thought that was quite telling that he was the man they chose. He did touch on it. He's had ankle injuries. He admitted that he's been incredibly frustrated. It's been hard. He hasn't been able to play as much as he wanted. He hasn't delivered. And I hope for him. He's still again. I think he's maybe only 24. He's maybe 25. He's incredible. Like compared to us two L fellas, done he? He's such a young lad, and
Yeah,
he's a smashing
and
player.
and the prime years are still there for him, absolutely.
Yeah. So
And look, I made the cardinal sin as a Shells fan to get very giddy when we signed him. I told myself, I chastised myself after getting giddy about the signing of Yo-Yo Maddie back in the day. He was a lovely fella, but it didn't work out. And I said to myself after that, I was like, no more giddiness. Uh, you're a grown man. Don't get giddy over football signings. And I allowed myself some indulgence when we signed Chapman, because I was really taken by him that season that he'd have for Sligo. And you wouldn't often have eyes for players elsewhere in the league. Maybe um, uh, some players would really have to go a long way to sort of stand out and be like, Jesus, I'd love to have a Dawson Devoy or a Saboale, or the guys who kind of get on your radar are guys who've obviously done very impressive things. And Chapman was very much on my radar, not least for his performances against us, but also in scoring, very eye catching goals and just looking very dynamic in midfield. And yeah, look, we all know the story. It hasn't worked out for him yet. But if this is a sliding doors moment where Cara McEnroy's gone with an injury, if Chapman now feels that he is injury free and is able to contribute and has put in a 90-minute performance where he didn't look to flag massively for me, then yeah, if we can get that guy that I thought we signed from Sligo, like again, this could be a sliding doors moment in our season, because we are going to need some people to step up. That's just the reality of it.
yeah, we are about 2.5 weeks away from the draw for Europe, Donny. I think June 17th, I believe. So, like things all in the next after this sort of mini break, we wish all the players who are probably currently over in Marbella sunning themselves, hopefully on their San Pellegrino and or Perrier. When they get back, it's going to be fairly hectic. I think Shamrock Rovers are next up in Tolka on the return.
Yeah.
Uh, the league is gone. Like we're never going to win the league. I think Colin mentioned it recently that there was a glimmer of hope. I think after game 10, there was no glimmer. So anyway, my point is we got some big weeks coming, and I hope Eliis Chapman has a good run in the game. The sliding doors is a good way to put it, Donny. And sometimes that's what a player needs, just a little bit of fortune in their favour. So we've dragged a good nearly 40 minutes out of that Galway game, which is more entertaining than what I watched last Friday. So before we get on to our final section, as Nevin would say every week, thank you to everyone who listens to the show week after week. I believe the listenership numbers are strong and growing. It's a great tribute to Dunny, who's been here for I think it's nearly 70 episodes, Dunny. No grey hairs
Seven,
yet.
seven. Well, I don't know about that. That's why I get a haircut every week to get them cut. Um, yeah, it's great, and I don't often look at the figures, but I was sent them recently, and it's great to see that they are indeed still growing, and yeah, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people listening every week, which is fantastic. So it's humbling, and I'm glad that we're obviously able to provide a service for the fans, and yeah, hopefully we're doing a decent job of.
Absolutely. So if you're listening to this right now on your phone or wherever you're listening to it, go into the app or the wherever you listen to. Let's say for Spotify, for example, go into the rate section and please give the show a rating, 5-star rating, because Tony would know much more about this stuff than I do. All these algorithms somehow make a difference, and you're supporting the show. So it takes 5 seconds. Do it right now. So Donny, the big news last week off the field, I think it was last Thursday. It wasn't that you were coming out of retirement for the Shelbourne supporters team. That apparently that was fake news.
They've made the Shield this year without me. So yeah, I
That's
think they're doing the Shield final. They're
you're
doing
just fine.
just fine.
But on a slightly more serious note, and an incredibly significant announcement that the Immigrant Investment Program (IIP), something who those of us who would have been perhaps a little bit more involved in the club in recent years knew this was in the background. It was taking some time, but the government announced last Thursday 9.2 million euros in funding had been approved for Shells and the Tolka Park Community Project. The approval came from the Department of Justice under the Immigrant Investor Program, the scheme, which closed to new applicants in 2023, allowed wealthy individuals to seek Irish residency through donations to certain projects. And this is going to be, hopefully, Donny, another game changing situation for the club after the recent 250-year lease agreement. Your thoughts initially on Thursday when this hit your inbox?
Well, yeah, there's a lot in it, Andy, and it is monumental, and it's very exciting, and it's momentous. But I would just strike a note of caution at the moment because it isn't official. Because I think Barry Heenan, the TD, jumped the gun,
Oh, I see.
and the club.
RTE did announce it publicly, though, don't he? But
Well, they announced what he had said,
I see. Okay.
and they put a bit of meat on the bone. They went as well to the Minister of Justice, I think, and he has the last word in that RTE article that I was sent on the night, where he distances himself from the whole thing and says,
Okay.
individual applicants and
Yes.
individual,
Yeah.
is nothing to do with me, basically, which I thought was an unusual note to end what seemed like a fait accompli of a story. But look, I'm sure government ministers, or sorry, members of Dáil Éireann wouldn't be going out in front of the public unless they had it on extremely, extremely, extremely good authority that this was agreed in the background. But just to say that the club have not been officially informed that the money is there. So the club will not
Sure.
be comment.
Okay.
The reason you've probably not heard anything from the club is they haven't been told for sure that this is going ahead. But let's, for the sake of the giddiness, let's assume that Barry Heenan is correct and that the story is valid. The Immigrant Investor Program, has led. I saw some of the reactions to that. A lot of people obviously wouldn't know what it is. You've summed it up there nicely. It's basically cash for passports and residency. This is something that myself and the other 9 people in the Save Tolka Park steering group would have put into the and it was Lee Daly who led the way on this, friend of the show and top red, obviously Lee Daly.
Yep.
That when we put our documentation together for the Save Tolka Park campaign, we did a specific area in our sort of manifesto on funding, and if we were trying to get people to agree to not knock Tolka down, but obviously also agreeing that it needed to be renovated, and in its current state, it wasn't up to par. So, in that funding segment of our documentation, we looked at the LSSIF, the Large Scale Sports Infrastructure Fund, which is where I think Bows are getting their money from for Dailyman. And we mentioned the IIP, the Immigrant Investor Program. And that was in May or June of 2021. We would have put that document live. We obviously would have spoken to the club and Andrew Doyle, who was involved at the time, and shared our opinions on that we thought that this was a good avenue for funding regardless. So that's what the club went with an IIP application under Andrew Doyle at the time. They got in just in time. Talking about sliding doors moments, they got in just in time before the application process was effectively annulled and torn up, as you said, in 2023. I actually recall it was the day I got engaged. Myself and Jen were having a pint in McDade next to Stephen's Green, and it came up on the TV behind the door. And ever the romantic, I was like, "Oh, that's the application that we've made." I believe we got in just in time, but it's a bit so. It's been closed now for 3 years or more. So, but we didn't know. I've never seen the application personally, so I can't speak to what exactly is in it. But obviously, the news is that our application has been deemed successful and to the tune of 9.2 million. I believe 80% of that 9.2 million is going to be coming from these investors, and 20% is going to be coming from Shelburne FC's owners. So Neil Doyle, Mickey O'Rourke, and so on, that they're having to stump up over £1 million, which is no small beer, but to get to unlock the other 80% that's the deal. So I think a lot of Russians used to take this up. I remember around the time when I was in the Say Tolka Park campaign, doing a look at who were the types of people who were applying for these and getting and being granted residency, and I saw that there was a lot of Russians who had places in town, residence in town, quite close to Dáil Éireann actually. Now I assume since the invasion of Ukraine that they would no longer be considered. So I suspect that quite a lot of the applicants who are going to be the people in the Department of Justice are now going to have to go and find these people who have said that previously that they would contribute in order to gain residency. I imagine a lot of them would be probably from the Far East, mainly Chinese. I would suggest.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so I think it can come from multiple donors as well. That they don't need to find, say, 8 million quid from one particular person. That this can be a pretty broad church of people who have said. The idea is that I know I saw a lot of people online be like, "Oh, this sounds very shady," oligarchs from overseas suddenly have an interest in Tolka Park or whatever. The people whose money gets taken and put into these projects, and one of the examples that we used in our manifesto would have been the GAA grounds in Navan was rebuilt using Immigrant Investor Program money. But so why not Tolka? But the people who are doing the investing, who are handing over money for residency and passports, I don't know if they even find out where their money is gone, because it can go to the arts, it can go to sport, it can go to anything seen to have cultural significance and relevance. So it's not someone who's suddenly gotten an interest in Shelburne or Tolka Park. It is literally someone who wants to gain an Irish passport and one possibly for their family and so on. So that's the background of it. Obviously, the amount is large, and what I like specifically about this is that every red cent of the 9.2 million has to be spent on Tolka Park. So I kind of used an analogy when talking about this over the last few days of, like, if you applied to a government body to maybe retrofit your house to put a charging point for an electric vehicle in your driveway, and to put solar panels on the roof. If your application is a success and they say yes, you've unlocked this amount of funding, you can't take that money and go out and buy a Ferrari or put a swimming pool in your back garden.
It's very strict. Yeah, there is. I know you are right. There's very strict terms and conditions on this, Donny. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, I think that's important to know, that every single euro is going to be spent on renovating Tolka Park. So that's, as someone obviously who feels very emotionally and connected to the stadium, and all Shells fans should be rejoicing at that. As well, within that, I think there's a stipulation. So I haven't seen the plans, as I said. I have not seen the application. So I imagine, as you suggested there yourself as well, there will have to be an adherence to whatever was in those plans that was deemed worthy of getting this money. I know Andrew Doyle at the time said that he thought it was a world-class application that had gone in. So I expect that it was. And yes, we need to remember Andrew Doyle for doing this, obviously, as well, and thank him. But I think there are some other stipulations in regards to, say, planning permission. We aren't allowed to spend any of this 9.2 million on anything that requires getting planning permission. So, for example, if we wanted to knock the Ballybock end down and build it from scratch, we couldn't do that. So I think a lot of this money is probably going to go on aesthetics. And, we always would have said it in STP, we would have said renovation rather than rebuild, because it keeps your overheads lower. It keeps the sort of the sense of the old ground as well. And you can kind of play your seasons around this renovations, and it can be, piecemeal, and done over time to not be as disruptive as, say, what's going to happen eventually when Bohemians have to move out of Dalymount and so on, because that's a total rebuild and flipping the pitch and all that kind of thing. So I'd imagine if people are asking, where's the money going to go, you're probably looking at reseating, re-roofing, roofing. I'd say maybe floodlight improvements, accessibility for those with additional needs. And generally, it means we can do anything that doesn't require planning permission. So we can upgrade all of the rooms, say, in the Drumcondra stand. We can upgrade any room that we like. And I think that there should be a way to, say, to do the roofs, for example, in stages that don't require having to go down the planning permission route. And look, with the people at the head of the club now, Andy, I'd be very confident that we will make sure that we have our I's dotted and our T's crossed, and get every the maximum use that we can out of this wonderful news.
Yep. There's a few questions along those lines. Excuse me, from Gary Malone, Brian Morrissey, a few others, just regarding what this money could be used for. But I think the key to the awarding of the funds is that it's going to be a community hub. So right now, Tolka is not in use because there's no games on. People are away on holidays. But that sort of is going in. That's an indication of how Tolka should be used during the week. So I think they're going to definitely look into use of, let's say, they could build a gym, they could build coffee shops, they could build weekly crash facilities, open stuff that's open to the public. That's very key to it. There's a lot to look. 9 million is a lot of money, but on the flip side, in Ireland right now, in the current construction economy, 9 million can go in the blink of an eye. So I think Andrew Doyle, and I also, if I remember, I think Doyle may have said it in one of the fans forums that, as you touched on, Donny, it's going to be a refurbishment rather than a redevelopment, because if there's any change to Tolka Park, planning permission is needed, and that's a messy road nobody wants to go down to. You can see the current this satisfaction with residents on Richmond Road regarding the traffic, not necessarily to do with shells, but just the traffic system. So I think we'll see all the seats being ripped out. The roofs, I believe, have to be replaced like for like, similar shapes. Now, again, this is just my understanding. This is not concrete, but generally, stuff like toilets have to be improved. Just the whole access. Ballybock End is going to be interesting. Do we try and do something there? Obviously, I think for maybe 6 or 8 weekends a year, it's full. Otherwise, it's got a smattering of people. And so again, I don't think there's a huge panic in us doing it as far as I know, but it has to be done right the first time. And I'd have plenty of confidence in Neil, Tomas, and Mickey, and the other people there. Interesting as well, Tony, that Kerry FC got 5.2 million, as reported by their local paper, I think the Irish Examiner, down that neck of the woods, and Sligo Rovers got 6 million from the same program. So it's very positive news. One thing I was wondering, actually, is it less than 2 weeks ago that the Tolka Park Fund was announced?
Yeah.
Isn't it a happy coincidence that just after that was launched, we got this good news? Do you think the Tolka Park Fund could be repurposed? Because people might say now, well, I was going to give 50 quid to it, but why should I give 50 quid when they've got 9 million coming in the years ahead?
Um, I think it probably is a coincidence. But and I'm not sure. I still think there's a little bit of explaining the functionality of the Tolka Park Fund to the supporters. I kind of feel that maybe we rushed it a little bit, putting out the video and so on, and maybe not telling people exactly how they can contribute, or maybe that's still to come. I'm sure that will still come, and maybe it was just a sort of a heads up that this is something that you will be seeing over the coming weeks and months. As you said, 9 million. Once you start putting things in place, and you have to pay for designs, or for for the labor, and etc. etc. We'll burn through that money pretty quick once things get rolling. So I don't see any reason to not persevere with it, and say that, look, for example, I don't think the Ballybock end was even included in the application, because it would have required planning permission, and it's just a bit of
Okay.
I think that was seen as potentially something that could stifle the entire application, so they left that out. Frankly, I hope Dublin City Council, when it comes to the Ballybock end, would play nice with us, because they want a walkway behind there to give people, residents, access to the river, and to have a kind of a promenade situation there, which I think is excellent, and I think that DCC and ourselves should meet halfway on that, with the demolition of the old house that used to be the dressing rooms and so on, and that we could work in tandem with them, that when they decide that they're good to go on reshaping that area, that we're in lockstep with them, and that the Ballybock end gets done then. But for the other three sides, and for, as you said, the toilets and the access, and giving areas that the community can use more frequently, I think that's a brilliant idea. I think that's to the heart of the matter, really, when you're talking about how do you grow a football club. Well, you make the people in the area feel like it's important to them, and feel like they get some satisfaction, and some actual use out of it, and that you're not just trying to shake them down for money all the time, and blocking up their roads. That you let them in to see the place, that they can grab a coffee, they can maybe work remotely there in an office space, they can bring their parents or grandparents there for tea and scones, or they can drop their kids off at a creche, or they can use the gym, or whatever it might be. All of those things are on the table, and there is a longer term impact of that, with positivity for the club. And as you said previously, touching on the 250-year lease, we are going to be now embedded in this community, and we should start acting as such to reflect that. So I think that the 9.2 will go a long way. I think that the place is already looking so much better now with the Drumcondra stand opened. Maybe those types of seats might be seen
Yeah, they look great.
up and down the main stand. Is there an argument for some, say, standing areas? I think there probably is. And as you said, the roofs and so on. But the club should, I think, continue with the Tolka Park Fund, because once that 9.2 is gone, there's always going to be jobs to be done. Toilets are always going to need to be cleaned. Light bulbs are always going to need to be replaced. The grass is always going to need to be cut, so the lawnmower is going to have fuel in it, and so on. And to have a little kitty there, a sort of that people can dip in to use whenever the place needs a lick of paint or needs something fixed, I think is a very prudent and sensible thing to do.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a great head scratching problem to have, Donny. Could you imagine if even 5, 6, 7 years ago, even dreaming of stuff like this? So enormous credit to everyone who has been working tirelessly in the background to get this, and yeah, it's wonderful. So well done to everyone.
It was emotional, Andy. It's unlike me to skirt around the emotion of it and get straight into the facts. But I don't think I was alone in shedding a few tears when the news came through, which is a question I never answered for you, Andy. But I was totally broadsided. I didn't see it coming. The application had been in so long that I had gotten no word that something was coming down the line. It sort of just dropped in my lap late that evening, and I thought it was probably, until I saw the RTE article, I didn't believe it. I thought that it was being made up or it was AI generated or something. But to see where we've come from, like I said, the idea of the IIP was put into the Save Tolka Park campaign manifesto in the summer of 2021, and to see where we are now coming into the summer of 2026, we've gone from a situation where people wanted us to cohabit with Bohemians indefinitely for the foot, which I think would have probably was existential for the club. I think it probably would have killed the club.
It was that serious. I think we had a discussion many years ago in Tolka about that. To me would have been a death knell.
Yeah, I don't think the club would have survived that. Certainly in nowhere near the thriving place that it finds itself now. So to fast forward 5 years, to have saved the ground, to have picked up thousands of new fans on the way who feel so strongly about it as we do, who've matched our love and matched our connection to the place. To think of when in the first division days, when there was a few hundred people going to games regularly, that has swelled to where I'm unhappy when we don't hit 4,000 for every home game. And these people care deeply about Tolka Park as well. So to have acquired all these new supporters who care as much as they do, and then to have, as I said, the ground saved, the prospect of having the ground share with Bows firmly off the table, to have 250-year minimum of a home for our men's and women's team, which is crucial to our campaign as well, in that the women had to have equality of access, and they have that now for long after I'm gone. And we've somehow managed to win a league well, that as well, into the bargain. So we've grown the fan base, we've kept the stadium. The stadium is seen now with the Drumcondra end opened, and again, that's going from strength to strength. That already looks brilliant. and the ground is slowly beginning to look like the best football ground in the country again, like it did 20 years ago. And now on top of this, to see that we're going to get over 9 million to spend on it. If you had told us that in 2021 when we were putting these documents together, trying to fight our corner for even keeping the stadium in existence, I don't think even the most optimistic on the 10-person steering group could have thought that we'd get this far. So it again, it's humbling and very emotional. It kind of feels like we got there and then some. We won, and this felt like an extra bonus as well. That and Neil Doyle has been doing absolutely Trojan, unbelievable work, and spending no little amount of money doing it. So even to see him rewarded now for putting his money where his mouth is, and being able to dip into money that isn't his for a change to spend on the place that he's fallen in love with, just like ourselves, is brilliant, because he deserves that, because he's been reaching into his pocket over and over and over again, to make our home look better, feel better, and just be a better experience for the supporters. So this will go, a really, really long way to, again, I genuinely believe it. 20 years ago, Tolka Park was the best football stadium in the country. And I think with this money over the next few years, Tolka Park will once again be the best football stadium in this country.
Yeah, there was no atmosphere, I tell you now, in any football stadium, even any other stadium in this country, than Tolka Park when it's hopping. And it does put our uh, quibbles about why can't we defend corners in the shade. Only the fact that I was there that day in Richmond Park when we went down to Longford in the playoff during COVID. I think there was a handful of people there, and good Jesus, that was a day, that was a dark day. But we are in a much better place, and like I don't have any grandkids yet, but I hope if and when that day comes, and as you said, long after we're gone, that the next generations to come will be able to carry the torch forward for Tolka and to protect it and love it and care for it, because it's a living, breathing thing that, unless you experience it for the warts and all that it is, some people just think it's a bit of plastic seats and a bit of concrete. You can't bottle that. You can't put a price in it, but 9.2 million is a pretty decent starting point to try and bring this old lady back to life. And she's well up out of that chair now. She's nearly doing cartwheels.
She's looking well.
Right, so on that wonderful point, Donny, thanks for inviting me back. I'm going to go back into my cave now for another 6 months. And as I say,
great having you on, Andy.
Thank you, Donny.
Pleasure.
And thank you to Nev and to Collie for inviting me back. So busy few weeks ahead for the Reds. Exciting times. And stay tuned. Follow the show, like the show, and Donny and the team will be here to guide you through a very interesting summer. Until next week, take care and bye-bye.